0 to 60 in 32 seconds, floors rusting through in 2 years, swing axle suspensions that caused deadly spinouts. The 1960s produced some of the worst cars ever made. Today, we're breaking down 8 catastrophic failures that destroyed companies and sparked federal safety investigations. Let's get into it. 1960-1967 Renault Dauphine. The Renault Dauphine featured an 845cc inline-4 engine producing just 32 horsepower. It measured 155 inches long with an 89-inch wheelbase and weighed approximately 1,400 pounds. Why it was terrible? The performance was abysmal. Road and Track recorded 0 to 60 in 32 seconds. This made merging onto American highways genuinely dangerous. But the catastrophic issue was rust. The Dauphine used extremely thin 22 to 23 gauge steel that corroded through completely in just 2 years. Floors, fenders, and doors simply dissolved. Many cars became structurally unsound before they were paid off. The handling was dangerous. With 61% of weight over the rear wheels and swing axle suspension, the car exhibited severe oversteer. Renault specified unusual tire pressures, 15 psi front, 23 psi rear, to combat this. 1963-1976 Hillman Imp. The Hillman Imp featured an 875cc all-aluminum overhead cam engine producing 37 horsepower. It measured approximately 144 inches long with independent suspension at all 4 corners and a rear engine layout. Why it was terrible? The Imp was rushed into production at a brand new facility in Scotland before development was complete. Water pumps failed constantly. The cooling system couldn't prevent the rear-mounted engine from overheating. Gearboxes broke regularly. Water leaked into the cabin through poor seals. Early models had defective automatic chokes, pneumatic throttle linkages that failed, and front kingpins with plastic bearings that wore out quickly. Rust was everywhere. The double-skinned bodywork corroded along the front boot lid edge, door bottoms, and sills. Since the separate chassis had no outriggers, rusted sills meant structural failure. The sales numbers tell the story. First-year sales reached 33,000 units in 1963, climbed to 50,100 in 1964, then dropped to 42,663 as reliability problems became widely known. 1960-1963 Chevrolet Corvair. The Corvair measured approximately 180 inches long with a 108-inch wheelbase. It featured an air-cooled flat-six engine of 140 cubic inches, producing 80 horsepower in base form, later expanded to 145 cubic inches. Why it was terrible? The first-generation Corvair had a swing-axle rear suspension with 60 to 63% of the car's weight over the rear wheels. GM deleted the front anti-roll bar to save costs. This combination created severe oversteer tendencies. The tire pressure requirements were critical: 15 psi front, 26 psi rear. This was foreign to American drivers accustomed to equal pressures. Gas station attendants routinely ignored these specs and filled all tires equally, making the handling problems exponentially worse. When driven hard or in emergency situations, the rear end could tuck under, causing the car to spin violently out of control. This wasn't theoretical. It happened regularly. 1961-1968 Amphicar. Why it was terrible? The Amphicar was neither a good car nor a good boat. It was comprehensively bad at both functions. On land, the 43 horsepower struggled to move over 2,400 pounds. 0 to 60 took over 21 seconds. Narrow tires and nearly 10 inches of ground clearance resulted in terrible handling. The car felt top-heavy and unstable in corners. On water, it was worse. The Amphicar wasn't particularly watertight. Its flotation depended entirely on whether the bilge pump could keep up with water leakage. If the pump failed or couldn't keep pace, the Amphicar would sink. Time magazine called it a vehicle that promised to revolutionize drowning. Maintenance was absurd. After each water outing, owners had to grease 13 different points, one requiring removal of the rear seat. Parts availability was poor. Finding mechanics who understood amphibious vehicles was nearly impossible. The doors leaked. Seals failed regularly. Rust was inevitable given constant water exposure. The electrical system was vulnerable to moisture damage. 1965, 1967 AMC Rambler Marlin. Why it was terrible? The fundamental problem was platform selection. AMC built the Marlin on the mid-sized Rambler Classic chassis designed for family sedans. The fastback roof design sat atop a body that was simply too large. The proportions looked awkward and wrong. Performance was mediocre, despite decent engine options. The handling didn't match the car's sporty pretensions. The weight and awkward dynamics undermined any performance potential. The styling was universally criticized. While competitors like the Mustang and Barracuda had sleek, purposeful lines, the Marlin looked bulbous and ungainly. It appeared to be exactly what it was, a family sedan with a fastback roof grafted on. Sales collapsed. AMC sold 10,327 Marlins in 1965. Numbers dropped to 4,547 in 1966 and fell to just 2,500 in 1967, the car's final year on the classic platform. 1964, 1967 Vauxhall Victor FC. Why it was terrible? The Victor FC suffered from rust problems so severe they earned Vauxhall a reputation for corrosion that lasted decades. The inner and outer front wings rusted away with alarming speed. Door seals leaked, allowing water to enter and accelerate body rot. The sills and rear wheel arches dissolved into rust within just a few years. The wraparound windscreen design created water traps that contributed to pillar corrosion. Build quality was poor. The gearbox produced a notorious whine in all gears that worsened with age. The 3-speed column change transmission felt vague and imprecise. Performance was mediocre, with 0 to 60 taking over 20 seconds. Fuel consumption of 23.1 mpg placed it at the bottom of its class. The Victor FC was marketed as having 101 improvements over the previous model. Instead, it represented a massive step backward in quality and durability. 1962-1970 Triumph Spitfire Mk1 through 3. Why it was terrible? The biggest problem was the rear suspension. Early Spitfires used swing axles with a transverse leaf spring carried over from the Herald to save money. This created dangerous handling characteristics. Going into a corner too fast could result in sudden extreme positive camber called jacking, leading to violent spins. The inner wheel could tuck under and the car would spin without warning. This wasn't just inconvenient, it was genuinely dangerous. Engine problems plagued early models. Crankshaft thrust washers wore out, causing excessive fore and aft movement of the crankshaft. If not caught early, this could terminally damage the crankshaft and block. The 1147cc and 1296cc engines were particularly prone to this failure. Rust appeared quickly. Front valances rotted fast. Sills, which provided crucial structural support since the separate chassis had no outriggers, rusted through. front trunnions could seize and snap the kingpin if not regularly lubricated. 1960 Ford Falcon. Why it was terrible? Ford's obsession with fuel economy created the real problem. They specified a 3.10 rear axle ratio that maximized highway fuel consumption but made the car nearly impossible to drive in real-world conditions. The gap between second and third gear in the 3-speed manual transmission was so wide that passing from 50 miles per hour became genuinely frustrating. In second gear, the engine ran out of breath. In third gear at that speed, it had no torque. Motor Life magazine recorded 0 to 60 in 17.3 seconds, noting that real-world performance felt even slower due to gearing problems. The steering required 4.6 turns lock to lock, making it slow and ponderous. The ride was firm and shook badly on rough surfaces. Interior materials were cheap and utilitarian even by 1960s economy car standards. The Falcon's brakes were adequate and cornering was acceptable, but these positives couldn't overcome the anemic performance and poor gearing.